Hello, welcome back to the Board Games 4K YouTube channel, and this is a channel where we give you reviews, playthroughs, unboxings. We generally like to talk a load of bollocks about tabletop gaming in general, and in this video we're going to be talking about a worker placement game that was released in 2013. We're going to be talking about Russian Railroads, and in this game you will be placing your workers out on the board to take actions that will give you victory points that will allow you to win the game of Russian Railroads. So in this video we're going to give you a very brief overview of the rules. We'll be telling you what we do like, what we don't like, then we'll come back and we'll tell you whether or not Russian Railroads is still worth playing 7 years after it was first released in 2010. So remember, if you're new here, please consider subscribing to this channel, and if you're not new here, then why aren't you bloody well subscribed, eh? And we'll see you after I've had a cheeky slash. Board Games 4K. So, Russian Railroads. How'd you play this game? So Russian Railroads is a worker placement game. Everybody starts a game with a certain amount of workers, and what you'll be doing, you'll be putting your worker on the board. You'll be taking the action associated with that space. This game lasts for a maximum of 6 rounds. It all depends how many players you're playing with, but with the full capacity of 4 players, it's going to last 6 rounds. Right, so the first thing you're going to do is going to put the main board, a very, very small board actually, in the centre of the table, and everyone's going to get a player board, some money, and a load of workers, and you're going to get a piece of black rail, and you'll put one piece of black rail on each of the 3 railroad tracks. You've got the Trans-Siberian Railroad, you've got Moscow to St. Petersburg, and then you've got the Moscow to Kiev line. And you'll also take an industry marker and you'll put it on the first space of the industry marker track at the bottom of the player board. Right, so on your turn you will take one of your workers and you'll put it on a vacant spot on the main board, and you'll take the action associated with that space, right? So you can also pass, and when everybody's passed, then you'll do a bit of end of round scoring, and there'll also be some conditions that will grant you end of game scoring, which we'll get into those 2 things in a little bit, right? So some of the actions that you can take in this game are, you can take the track extension action. There's different types of tracks. You've got the black track, you've got the grey track, you've got the brown track, you've got the natural colour track, and then you've got the white track, and there's different spaces that correspond to each of these types of tracks. You all start with black track, so that's the only one that you can increase at the beginning of the game, but you'll notice that the further up the tracks that you move your black track, you'll unlock what's called bonuses as you progress down the line. If you look at the Trans-Siberian Railroad, then you will be able to unlock brown tracks. You'll be able to unlock the silver track, the brown track, and all the other different types of tracks the further down you go. And there's a couple of little rules to do with moving your rails down the tracks. You can't leapfrog over any tracks that are on the board, so you need to move the black track first, unlock another coloured track, then move the next coloured track, which would be the silver, down the track, and then unlock each type of track subsequently in that order, right? So with the extend track action, you'll be able to unlock maybe 1 piece, 2 pieces, dependent on who's been there and who's gobbled up all the nice stuff first. So you've got the build locomotive or build factory action. So you put your worker on that space, and then you'll take the lowest numbered locomotive that's available. At the beginning of the game, you're going to pile up all the locomotives dependent on their value, and if 2 is the lowest value, you'll have to take a 2, and then what you do, you'll place it next to one of the 3 railroads that's on your player board. You'll notice that the Trans-Siberian can accommodate 2 locomotives, but the other 2 can only accommodate 1. If you find that all the railroads are full up, then you can replace a locomotive with a higher value locomotive, and you can jiggle these around until you can't place a higher value locomotive. And if you can't place a higher value locomotive, then you've always got the option of flipping over the tile and turning it into a factory. And what you do with factories, you will place the factories in the relevant slots at the bottom of your player board, and we'll get into factories in a little bit. So the way that you activate factories, what you'll do is you'll take your industry marker, and certain actions will allow you to move that forward, and when you pass over the factory, you will activate it and you will get to take the action associated with the factory. So some of the bonuses that you can get from the factory spaces are, you can immediately score the sum of your engineers. That won't make sense to you at the moment, but we'll get into what engineers do in a little bit, right? You can build a locomotive or a factory. You can choose an action space with one and only one worker of your colour and use that action again. This doesn't allow you to use the take 2 extra workers, which we'll talk about in a bit, but you thought you could take that, didn't you? You're sly. So you can place 2 doublers above the Trans-Siberian Railroad. And what doublers do in scoring, they'll double the amount of points that you get for that space. And we'll talk about end of round scoring in a little bit. So these are quite powerful bonuses. All you've got to do to activate them is move your marker across it, and Bob's your uncle, super duper, it's done. So the next action you can take is the industrialization action. And this is what we just talked about. All you're going to do is you put your worker out, and then you'll move your industrialization marker up that many spaces on the purple track. So also there are things called auxiliary actions, right? One of these is that it allows you to take a doubler and put it at the top of your player board. The next one is that you can take 2 rubles, right? And the other one is that you can take 2 extra workers, and you can't use this for that take the same action again thing, right? You got that? I'll repeat myself. So the next thing you could do is you can sort out your engineers, right? There's a cluster of engineers that are available. There's 1 available to hire every round, and there's 2 available to abuse every round, right? As these engineers are used and abused, you'll be revealing new ones, right? So what you'll do, you'll pay 1 ruble and you'll take the engineer and you'll put it in front of you, and that is now your own personal assistant that will do what you tell them. Only you can take the action on the engineer, but there are 2 other engineers that you can use by placing a worker on each round, right? And obviously once those are used up, then that's it. So at the end of the round, you'll fill up all the spaces. The next engineer in line will become the one that you can hire, right? Lovely. So some of the engineer bonuses that you can get are, so you've got the geezer that will give you 2 track advancements of your choice. You've got the lady that will allow you to get 1 grey track advancement and 1 brown track advancement. You've got the bloke in the funny hat that will allow you to build 1 locomotive or 1 factory, or maybe you want to check out the geezer that gives you 1 industry advancement and lets you score 3 points, right? The engineers are really, really powerful, and there's also like a majorities thing where if you've got the most engineers at the end of the game, then you're going to get 40 points. Yes, 40 points. There's also actions that you can take which are going to allow you to go first or second. All you're going to do is put your worker on there, and then you'll go first or second in the next round. And the beauty about this space is if you go there, once everyone's passed, then you get to take that worker off that space and go somewhere else that's worth 1 worker, right? Oh, that's lovely. So, like we said, there's special places on your player board. Remember we said that if you move the black track past certain spaces, then you'll unlock a bonus. But there's also spaces where if you move a different coloured track and you've got a locomotive that can reach that track, i.e. that the value of the locomotive is equal to the number of spaces between the locomotive and the piece of track, then you'll unlock a bonus as well. So space 3 of the Trans-Siberian Railroad, you will be able to get an extra worker if you've got a locomotive that can reach it and you've got brown track there. You'll be able to take a bonus marker of your choice if you have moved your black track and got a locomotive that can reach it on the Moscow to St. Petersburg Railroad. And these bonus tokens are absolutely phenomenal. They allow you to activate a one-time mega bonus. Some of these could be or are. You could choose to get 5 industry advancements. Imagine that, 5 industry advancements. You could place a medal under space 5 of the Kiev Railway, and in each following scoring, if you reach space 5 of the grey track and a locomotive, you score an additional 20 points, or you can get 4 advancements of the track of your choice, right? So these bonuses are absolutely huge. There are some other cards that will allow you to get different bonuses. We're not going to go into them, but they give you mega bonuses as well. So once everyone's passed and anyone that's on the 1 or 2 space on the turn order track has taken extra action, then you'll do a bit of end of round scoring that goes a bit like this. So you will score the 3 railroads. Only spaces that can be reached by a locomotive will score. So the Moscow to Kiev one is very, very simple. You will look at the stars at the bottom, and if you can reach it, you'll get that many victory points, and it's cumulative. It's cumulative. It's cumulative. Oh my God, so many points. Further to this, you will get points for each type of railroad that you've got on each line. Each vacant space behind the different coloured track will score you amount of points. If you've got a piece of white railroad, it'll score you 7 points. If you've got natural, you get 4. Brown will give you 2. Silver will give you 1, and brown will give you nothing. If you get to the end of each line, you'll get 10 points, and you'll also get points dependent on how far your marker is up the industrialisation track. So at the end of the game, you'll do one end of round scoring thing. Again, you'll get points based on any bonus cards that you've collected through your bonus markers and that sort of thing. And you'll also get 40 points if you've got the most engineers and 20 points if you've got the second most engineers. So once everyone's done that, you've done the last bit of final scoring. The player with the most victory points will be the winner of Russian Railroads. So what do we like about Russian Railroads? So the first thing that we really like about Russian Railroads is the way that the victory points snowball out of control. You know what I mean? You start off with this little tiny little flake of snow, and by the end of it, you've got this massive Raiders of the Lost Ark style snowball sitting in front of you. When we played this last, I ended up with about 385 points, and towards the beginning of the game, it feels like you're sort of walking through mud because it doesn't feel like you can get your train moving that quickly, you know what I mean? But towards the end of the game, points keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. And we love that. We love the fact that you're literally drowning in points. So the second thing that we really like about Russian Railroads is the fact that there's always something good on offer. It doesn't matter where you go, you're going to be able to do something useful, whether or not you're going to be getting the rubles that will allow you to get an engineer or take an extra action, because we forgot to mention in the rules overview that rubles can substitute workers, so that's always good. And there's only one space you can go to get rubles, right? You might want to get the extra 2 workers. You might be able to enhance your track. You'll be able to enhance your industrialisation. You might be able to blag an engineer. There's so much stuff to do, so many wonderful choices to be made that you're never going to be taking a crappy action. So the next thing that we really like about Russian Railroads is the way that the tracks unlock bonuses as you progress into a game. And this sort of reminds us of like those sort of early sort of video games that gave you little drip, drip, drip unlocks, you know, like that sort of Call of Duty thing. As you progress through the structure of the game, you're going to unlock bonuses that will allow you to do bigger and more powerful stuff. So the fact they've taken the concept of these unlocks from video games and transplanted them into a board game makes the game really, really exciting. So the final thing that we really like about Russian Railroads is that there's a definite sense of progression as you move through the tracks, but you can't do everything you want. If you are going to focus on, say, the Trans-Siberian Railroad, you're going to be forced to set aside your progress on the industrialisation track or one of the other railroads, or maybe you won't be able to get the engineers. So you've got to choose very carefully what actions you take and when. And turn order is instrumental to success in this game. You've got to be very, very mindful of when you go first and when you go last, because if you go last, you're going to get an automatic 4 victory points at the end of the round, right? But if you go first, you're not going to get anything, but you're going to get first dibs on what's available. So it might not always be in your interest to go first, and you've got to weigh up the pros and cons as to when to pull the trigger on those 2 actions. So what don't we like about Russian Railroads? So the first thing that we don't like about Russian Railroads is as the game progresses, as you're getting towards the end game, the game tends to sort of dry up like an abandoned riverbed, you know what I mean? It feels like the Soviet Union's coming to an end, you know, that late 80s, early 90s sort of feeling, that what was once great is suddenly coming collapsing down because certain actions don't have any potency anymore. Where you've maxed out most of your tracks and you've got all the bonuses that you feel you can do, you're just placing workers thinking, how can I scramble up a few extra points? The crescendo doesn't match the mid portion of the game, you know what I mean? So the second thing that we don't like about Russian Railroads is the rulebook. It's very, very vague with certain things and it's overly complex. I mean, there's 24 pages in the rulebook, yeah? It's split into 2 sections. So you've got the actions first and then it describes all the other comfort that goes with it. And there's loads and loads of examples. There's not really any need to make the game more complex than it actually is because it's very, very simple. It's a worker placement game. Most people that are going to be playing this game are going to know what the bloody hell they're doing here, right? You're going to be placing your worker on the board, taking the action. That's all you need to know. There's a few convoluted rules with the rails and all that sort of thing, but that could have been easily explained. You don't need a 24-page rule book for a worker placement game. So the next thing that we don't like about Russian Railroads is it's very easy to mix up certain bonuses. When we play this with people that are new to the game, they seem to forget that you need to have a certain colour of track on a certain bonus to unlock it. Where you're concentrating on your own game, you're not going to be paying attention to what other players are doing, and they might have unlocked the space that gives them an extra meeple, but they ain't got a brown track on there, they've put a black track on there, you know what I mean? So it's very, very easy to get bogged down in that sort of weird zombie mode where you are just looking at the board while other people are making errors. And if you make an error with that, you can't pull that back. There's no way of undoing it. You can't unpick mistakes in this game. So the final thing that we don't like about Russian Railroads, and this is sort of nitpicking a little bit, isn't it? You know, but it's sometimes where the rules are quite vague and there's lots of areas that need clarification. If you take your mind off the game for a little bit and you go looking for rules, or you're discussing rules, it's very difficult to remember whose turn it is, you know. And there's a few occasions when we've played this where you go off into this nether world and you start talking about the game, trying to find out, you know, what that rule means. And then when you actually come back into the game, you're like, whose go is it? I don't remember. So to summarise, is Russian Railroads worth your time and bother today and in the future? So we are going to say yes, without a doubt. This is now one of our favourite worker placement games of all time. It's a very, very simple concept, right? But it dares to be different. The fact that you can unlock bonuses and the fact that you've got a generic worker placement game that has that added element of progression unlocks is really, really satisfying. It does suffer from an overly complicated rule book and also the pariah of empty turns towards the end of the game. But the fact that there's so many points on offer and the fact that the theme itself for us was quite interesting, because I've always been interested in that Soviet aesthetic, so that's a bonus. As far as medium weight worker placement games go, you can't go far wrong with Russian Railroads. We really, really enjoy this game and we think you should too. So we're going to give Russian Railroads 5 out of 5. This is definitely going to make our top 10 when we do a revised list of our top 10 worker placement games. Sadly, it's out of print. We had to go hunting this down. We found a copy in Poland, so it's still out there if you can find it. And if you can find it, definitely go and grab yourself a copy. So that's Russian Railroads. Remember, if you're new here, then please consider subscribing to this channel. Leave a comment in that section down now. And we'll see you next time.